You are finally having a good day, not a great day, not the kind of day that feels like healing has arrived and everything is going to be okay. Just a quiet, ordinary, almost normal day. The kind of day where you went a few hours without thinking about them, without replaying the conversation, without hearing their voice in your head saying the thing they said that you have now heard 10,000 times in the silence of your own mind. And then something happened, a song on the radio, a smell, a particular quality of afternoon light, a stranger who walked past you with the same posture, a word someone used in a completely unrelated conversation, and in an instant, without your permission, without your consent, without any warning at all, you were back, not metaphorically back, physiologically back, your heart doing what it did then, your body holding the tension it held then, your mind flooding with the images and the words and the feelings that you thought you had put away for today at least, that you thought you were done with for this particular afternoon. But your brain had other plans, and you sat with it, again, wondering why you cannot seem to control this, why the memories keep coming back no matter how hard you try to stop them, why your mind returns to the most painful moments of your past with a frequency and an intensity that feels almost like punishment, as if your own brain has decided that you need to relive what hurt you over and over and over again, without any clear reason why. You have probably been told to just stop thinking about it, to move on, to focus on the present, to choose not to dwell, and you have tried all of those things. You have tried them sincerely and with real effort, and they have not worked, not consistently, not in the way that would allow you to actually stop being ambushed by your own memory at random moments of what should have been peace. And here is what I want to tell you before we go any further. The fact that those strategies have not worked is not a failure of your willpower or your commitment to healing. It is a failure of understanding what is actually happening in your brain, because what is happening is not what most people think is happening. It is not weakness. It is not obsession. It is not an inability to let go. It is not evidence that you are stuck in the past or that you are choosing to hold on to something that is hurting you. It is neuroscience. And once you understand the neuroscience, once you know exactly what your brain is doing and why it is doing it, you will have something far more useful than willpower to work with. You will have understanding. And understanding is where real change begins. Before we go further, I want to plant 4 questions in your mind that will be answered before this video ends. Why does the brain return to painful memories more often than to positive ones? And is there a neurological reason for this that has nothing to do with emotional weakness? Why do certain sensory triggers, a smell, a song, a quality of light, send you back into a traumatic memory more powerfully than consciously thinking about the memory itself? Why does trying hard not to think about something almost always make you think about it more? And the question that most people who are struggling with intrusive memories never think to ask, what is your brain actually trying to accomplish by returning to these memories, and is it possible that it is trying to help you? Hold every one of those questions. They will all be answered before this video ends. And the answer to that last one, the one about what your brain is trying to accomplish, is going to completely reframe how you understand what has been happening to you. Now let us begin with the most fundamental piece of neuroscience that explains everything else. Your brain is not a filing system. This is the most important thing to understand. Most people think of memory the way they think of a filing cabinet. You experience something, the experience is recorded, the recording is filed in a location, and when you want to retrieve it, you open the drawer, find the file, look at it, and close the drawer again. If memory worked this way, intrusive memories would not exist. You would only access a memory when you chose to access it. You would open the drawer when you wanted to and leave it closed when you did not. But memory does not work this way at all. Memory is not a recording. It is a reconstruction. Every time you remember something, your brain is not playing back a stored file. It is rebuilding the experience from components, sensory details, emotional states, contextual information, body sensations, that are stored in distributed networks across multiple brain regions simultaneously. And this distributed, reconstructive nature of memory is what makes it so susceptible to involuntary triggering. Because the components of a memory, the sensory details, the emotional charge, the body sensations, are not stored behind a locked door that only opens when you consciously choose to remember. They are woven into the ongoing fabric of your neural activity. They are part of the background hum of your brain's moment-to-moment processing of the world. And when something in your current environment contains a component that matches a component of a stored experience, even something as subtle as a particular quality of light or the rhythm of a voice, your brain begins the reconstruction process automatically, not because you chose to remember, because the trigger activated a thread, and the thread is connected to a network, and the network contains the memory, and the reconstruction begins before your conscious mind has had any say in the matter. This is called state-dependent memory retrieval, and it is one of the most powerful and least understood mechanisms in all of human neuroscience. Now let us talk about something called the amygdala, because understanding what the amygdala does is essential to understanding why toxic memories in particular, the ones connected to fear, threat, betrayal, and pain, are retrieved more easily, more frequently, and with more physiological intensity than ordinary memories. The amygdala is a small, almond-shaped structure deep in the brain that is responsible for processing emotional experiences, particularly experiences that involve threat, fear, and intense stress. And the amygdala has a specific relationship with memory that explains almost everything about why traumatic memories feel different from ordinary ones. When you experience something that the amygdala registers as threatening or emotionally significant, it does something that ordinary experiences do not trigger. It signals the hippocampus, the brain region most centrally involved in memory formation, to encode the experience with a priority flag, not a conscious flag, not a label that says this is important, remember this. A neurochemical flag, a specific pattern of neurotransmitter activity that essentially tells the memory formation system, whatever just happened requires special attention. Encode this more deeply. Make the network stronger. Make the retrieval pathways more accessible. This is why you can remember in vivid, sensory, almost cinematic detail the moment something traumatic or deeply emotionally significant happened to you while simultaneously being unable to remember what you had for lunch 3 Tuesdays ago. The traumatic memory was flagged for priority encoding. Its neural network is stronger, its retrieval pathways are more numerous. Its components, the sensory details, the emotional charge, the body sensations, are more deeply embedded in the brain's ongoing activity. And more deeply embedded means more easily triggered. More easily triggered means more frequently retrieved. More frequently retrieved means more frequently reconstructed and re-experienced. The brain did not encode your traumatic memories more deeply because it wants you to suffer. It encoded them more deeply because it was doing its job. The job of an organ that evolved over millions of years in an environment where threat was real and where forgetting a threat could cost you your life. Your amygdala does not know that the threat is over. It only knows that whatever happened was important enough to be remembered perfectly. And so it keeps the memory accessible, keeps the retrieval pathways clear, keeps the components woven into your ongoing neural activity in a way that means any matching trigger can begin the reconstruction at any moment without your permission. This is not weakness. This is an extraordinarily sophisticated survival system doing exactly what it was designed to do. It just was not designed for the world you are living in now. Now let us talk about something called neuroplasticity and the concept of neural pathways. Because understanding how the brain builds and maintains the networks that hold our memories is what finally explains why simply deciding to stop thinking about something almost never works. Every experience you have, every thought, every feeling, every sensory perception activates a specific pattern of neural firing. A specific network of neurons that communicate with each other through synaptic connections. And the fundamental rule of how these networks develop and strengthen is described by what neuroscientists call Hebb's law. Neurons that fire together wire together. Every time a specific pattern of neural firing is repeated, the synaptic connections between those neurons become stronger. The network becomes more efficient. The pattern becomes easier to activate. The retrieval pathway becomes more established. And this means something profoundly important for understanding intrusive memories. Every time a toxic memory is triggered and reconstructed, the neural network that holds it is strengthened, not weakened. Strengthened. The very act of involuntarily revisiting the memory makes the memory more accessible the next time, which means that the memories that are triggered most often become the memories that are easiest to trigger, which means that the memories connected to the most emotionally significant experiences, the ones that were encoded most deeply to begin with, become progressively more embedded in the brain's activity through the process of being repeatedly retrieved. This is the neurological feedback loop that explains why intrusive memories can feel like they intensify rather than fade over time without intervention. Not because you are dwelling on them by choice, not because something is wrong with your healing process, but because the brain is following its own rules, rules that were not designed with your conscious experience of suffering in mind. Now let us talk about something called the default mode network, because this is the neurological explanation for something that almost everyone who struggles with intrusive memories has noticed, but few people have ever had explained. The memories tend to come back most powerfully when you are not actively focused on something else. In the shower, in the car, in the space between waking and sleeping, in the quiet moments that should be restful, in the gaps between tasks when your mind is technically free. This is not coincidence. The default mode network is a set of brain regions that activate together when the brain is not engaged in a specific external task. When you are resting, daydreaming, mind-wandering, or simply not actively focused on a demand from the outside world. For most people, the default mode network is associated with self-referential thinking, thinking about yourself, your relationships, your past, your future, your internal emotional state. And for people who have experienced significant emotional pain or trauma, the default mode network has a well-documented tendency to return preferentially to the emotionally significant material that the amygdala has flagged for priority, which means that the moments of rest and quiet that should provide relief are precisely the moments when the brain is most likely to return to the painful memories. Not because you are choosing to think about them in your free time. Because the brain's default activity in those moments is to process the material it has flagged as most important for ongoing attention. And what has it flagged as most important? The threat, the pain, the unresolved emotional material that the survival brain believes still requires processing. The resting mind returns to the wounds not to torment you, but because it has not yet received the signal that the processing is complete. Now let us talk about something called the Zeigarnik effect and its relationship to traumatic memory, because this is one of the most important and least discussed neurological explanations for why certain memories, specifically the ones connected to experiences that were not fully resolved or processed, loop with particular persistence. Bluma Zeigarnik was a Soviet psychologist who, in the 1920s, made an observation that became one of the foundational concepts in cognitive psychology. She noticed that people remember interrupted tasks better than completed ones, that the mind holds unfinished things with greater persistence and greater clarity than things that have been brought to completion, that there is something in the brain's processing architecture that keeps unresolved material in a heightened state of activation until resolution arrives. Psychologists now understand this as a feature of the brain's goal-directed processing systems. The brain treats unresolved experiences as open goals, and open goals are kept active in working memory and in the default mode network's processing until they are closed, either through resolution or through the brain's eventual updating of its model of the situation. Traumatic and emotionally significant memories from painful relationships are almost always connected to experiences that were not resolved in the way the brain's processing system expected them to be. The conversation that never happened, the acknowledgement that never came, the apology that was given but that did not address what actually happened, the ending that had no closure, the questions that were never answered, the understanding of what happened that only arrived much later, long after the event itself had already been encoded. All of these are open loops in the brain's processing architecture, and the Zeigarnik effect keeps them active, keeps returning to them, keeps trying to find the resolution that would allow the loop to close and the memory to settle into the completed past rather than remaining in the activated present. This is why the most persistently intrusive memories are almost never the ones that ended cleanly. They are the ones that ended in confusion, in questions, in the specific kind of unresolved pain that the brain keeps reaching toward because it has not yet been given what it needs to file the experience as complete. The brain is not punishing you by returning to these memories. It is trying to finish something, and until it receives what it needs to finish it, it will keep returning. Now let us talk about the phenomenon of somatic memory, memory that is stored not just in the neural networks of the brain, but in the body itself, in the nervous system, in the muscles and the posture and the patterns of tension and release that the body learned during the period of the painful experience. The body keeps the score. This phrase, made famous by psychiatrist Bessel van der Kolk, describes one of the most important discoveries in trauma neuroscience of the last 3 decades. Traumatic and highly stressful experiences are encoded not just cognitively, in the explicit memory systems of the hippocampus and the cortex, but somatically, in the body's implicit memory systems, in the patterns of nervous system activation that were present during the experience. And somatic memories are triggered differently from cognitive ones. Cognitive memories can sometimes be managed through conscious redirection of attention. You notice the thought arising and you redirect. This works partially and inconsistently because the thought arises from a neural network that is not under direct conscious control, but at least the thought is in the domain of conscious experience and can sometimes be addressed there. Somatic memories bypass conscious experience entirely. They are triggered not by thoughts about the experience, but by body states that match the body states present during the experience, by levels of muscle tension, by breathing patterns, by posture, by the specific physiological state of activation or depletion that characterize the period of the trauma. And when the somatic memory is triggered, the body re-enters the physiological state of the original experience before the conscious mind has even had a chance to register what is happening. This is why you sometimes find yourself in the grip of a powerful emotional state that seems to have no clear cognitive trigger. Why your heart is racing and your body is braced, and you feel the weight of the old pain before you have even consciously thought about it. Why the smell or the sound or the particular quality of light sends you back so completely and so immediately, because it triggered the somatic memory first, before thought, before language, before the conscious narrative that usually mediates your experience of the world. The body remembers in a language that is older than thought, and reaching that memory, processing it, updating it, allowing the body to learn that the threat is no longer present, requires working in that precognitive language, through breath, through movement, through somatic experience, through the kind of body-based practices that allow the nervous system to update its threat assessment, not through being told that things are different, but through being given the direct physical experience of safety that it can recognize in the language it actually speaks. Now, I want to talk about something that brings together everything we have discussed and points toward what actually helps. Because understanding the neuroscience is only valuable if it leads somewhere, if it opens a door that was not visible before. And the door that the neuroscience opens is this. Healing intrusive memories is not about willpower. It is not about trying harder not to think about them. It is not about positive thinking or choosing to focus on the good or any of the other cognitive strategies that well-meaning people recommend and that consistently fail, because they are trying to use the conscious mind to address a process that is happening beneath the level of conscious control. Healing intrusive memories is about giving the brain what it actually needs to update, and what the brain actually needs is specific. It needs safety signals, consistent, repeated, physiologically real signals to the nervous system that the threat is over, not statements that the threat is over. Physical experiences of safety that the body can recognize in its own language, that the amygdala can register as evidence that the priority flag can be lowered, that the survival brain can use to update its threat assessment from ongoing to completed. It needs resolution where resolution is possible. The open loops that the Zeigarnik effect keeps active need to be closed, not necessarily through external resolution that requires another person's participation, but through internal resolution, through the process of arriving at your own understanding of what happened that is complete enough that the brain's processing system registers the loop as closed, through the work of making meaning of the experience in a way that allows the brain to file it as past, rather than keeping it active as present. It needs the body to be included in the healing. The somatic memories that are stored in the nervous system cannot be reached by the conscious mind alone. They require practices that work in the body's own language, regulated breathing, movement, somatic experiencing, any practice that gives the nervous system the direct physical experience of safety and completion that allows the body's memory of threat to begin to update. And it needs time, not passive time, not simply waiting for the memories to fade on their own, but active time. Time in which the neural network of the traumatic memory is being gradually replaced by new associations, in which the retrieval pathways are becoming less frequented through the creation of new pathways, in which the brain is being given the consistent evidence of present safety that allows its past threat processing to begin to settle. None of this is quick, none of it is simple, None of it responds to the instruction to just stop thinking about it. But all of it is possible. Now I promised you 4 answers to the 4 questions I planted at the beginning. Here they are. The first question was, why does the brain return to painful memories more often than to positive ones? And is there a neurological reason for this that has nothing to do with emotional weakness? Yes. There is a completely neurological explanation, and it has nothing whatsoever to do with emotional weakness. The amygdala, the brain's threat detection and emotional significance processing center, flags emotionally significant and threatening experiences for priority encoding. This means that memories connected to pain, fear, betrayal, and threat are encoded more deeply, with stronger neural networks and more accessible retrieval pathways than memories connected to ordinary positive experiences. This is a survival feature. In the environment in which the human brain evolved, remembering threats in detail was essential for survival. Forgetting them could be fatal. Forgetting a pleasant afternoon carried no such cost. The negativity bias in memory is not a personality flaw or a sign of damaged thinking. It is the evolutionary legacy of a brain that was built to keep you alive by keeping the threats you have survived in the most accessible possible location. The second question was, why do certain sensory triggers send you back into a traumatic memory more powerfully than consciously thinking about the memory itself? Because sensory triggers bypass the conscious mind and activate the somatic and amygdala-based memory systems directly. When you consciously think about a memory, you are engaging the explicit memory systems of the prefrontal cortex, the conscious, language-based, narrative processing systems that allow you to hold the memory at some cognitive distance. But when a sensory trigger activates a memory, it does so through the implicit memory systems, through the amygdala, through the somatic nervous system, bypassing the prefrontal cortex's moderating influence entirely. This is why the smell sends you back more powerfully than the thought, because the smell reaches the memory through a neural pathway that does not pass through the part of your brain that can contextualize, regulate, and process. It reaches it through the part that simply responds, without buffer, without cognitive distance, without the protection of narrative. The third question was, why does trying hard not to think about something almost always make you think about it more? This is one of the most reliably demonstrated effects in cognitive psychology, and it has a specific neurological explanation. When you try not to think about something, your brain must first represent the thing you are trying not to think about in order to monitor whether you are successfully not thinking about it. This monitoring process itself activates the neural network of the very thing you are trying to suppress. The suppression attempt requires engaging with the content being suppressed, and engaging with that content, even in the context of monitoring to ensure you are not thinking about it, is enough activation of the neural network to trigger the memory it contains. This is called the ironic process theory, first described by social psychologist Daniel Wegner, and it explains why the instruction to not think about a white bear produces an immediate and nearly irresistible image of a white bear. The suppression and the content are neurologically inseparable. You cannot monitor for the absence of something without activating the representation of that something. The harder you try not to think about them, the more neural activation you are directing at exactly the memory you are trying to avoid. The fourth question, what is your brain actually trying to accomplish by returning to these memories, and is it possible that it is trying to help you? Yes, it is trying to help you, not in a way that feels like help, not in a way that produces comfort or ease or anything that resembles what help usually feels like, but in the specific, pragmatic, completely unsentimental way that the brain helps, by doing what it was built to do for the purpose it was built to do it. The brain returns to the painful memories because it has flagged them as unresolved, as open loops, as experiences that contain information relevant to your future survival that has not yet been fully processed into the updated model of the world that the brain uses to navigate and predict. Every return to the memory is the brain's attempt to extract something from it that it has not yet been able to extract, to close a loop that is still open, to complete a process that was interrupted by the overwhelming nature of the original experience. The brain is not torturing you with the memories, it is working on them, and the work is not finished yet, which means you are not stuck. You are in process, and the difference between those two things is everything. You are not a person who cannot heal. You are a brain that is still doing the work of healing in the only way it knows how, and the most useful thing you can do is not to stop it from working, but to give it better tools to work with. Let me leave you with this. You were finally having a good day, and then your brain brought you back, not to hurt you, because it is still working. Because the thing that happened to you was significant enough that it has not yet been fully integrated. Because the neural network is still strong. Because the loop is still open. Because the body has not yet received enough signals of safety to update its threat assessment. Because the work of making what happened into something your brain can file as complete rather than keep active as present is still in progress. That is not failure. That is the honest, difficult, neurologically real process of healing something that was worth healing from because it was real enough to matter. The intrusive memories are not a sign that you will always feel this way. They are a sign that your brain is taking seriously what happened to you. And as the signals of safety accumulate, as the loops close, as the body learns through experience rather than instruction that the threat is over, as the neural networks of the painful memories are gradually joined by new networks that carry new meaning and new context, the frequency will change. Not all at once, not on a schedule you can predict, not in response to willpower or positive thinking or deciding that enough time has passed, in response to the slow, unglamorous, entirely necessary work of giving your brain what it actually needs to let the past become the past. You are not broken. You are healing. And your brain, in all of its complicated, involuntary, sometimes maddening loyalty to what you have survived, is doing the work with you. Trust the process. Subscribe to this channel because every week we go deeper into the neuroscience of trauma, healing, memory, and what it truly means to help your brain do the work it is already trying to do. And remember this, the memories keep coming back because your brain knows what happened mattered, and it is right, it did. And you will be okay.